Canadian Cultural Center for His Holiness the Great 14th Dalai Lama's very auspicious 90th birthday. And so, however, we do have a very nice thing planned for those of you who are able to be with us online. Don Handrick will be leading a session during our usual time slot. Dave, do you have any other details you want to share about Don's presentation on the birthday?
No.
Okay, all right. All right. Oh, no, that's cool. So that will be happening, and we'll be continuing after that every Sunday with this series that with the current text of the fifth Dalai Lama's Lam Rim. Today, Geshe plans to just finish up a couple of loose ends with the Vajrasattva practice as well as speak on the Lam Rim text. So that's the plan for today. The last Saturday of the month will be the Chakra Samvara teaching for those of you following that. And then in August, there won't be an Ascending the Path of Vajrayana class because that month will be open for catch up. And then come September, a lot of things will be starting again. Dave's book group will be starting up again, and then Geshe will be starting with the Vajrabhairava and completion stage of Vajrayogini highest yoga tantra class, alternating months with Chakra Samvara until we finish that. Let me see. I think that's pretty much all that I had to share in terms of programming. Thank you, everybody, for choosing to spend this beautiful Sunday with us. I'll invite Geshe down, and we'll get started in 2 or 3 minutes. Grab yourself a cup of coffee or tea, make yourself comfortable. So, could everyone hear Geshe-la's voice all right? It's a little soft, maybe. He's going to take it closer. So, did everyone hear Geshe okay? And you can hear me okay? And it looks like the picture is kind of pretty nice and clear, or as clear as it gets. So I think that's good. So let's get started. Oh, Jisunki. So, Tashi Dele, greetings to all Dharma friends. I hope that your study is going well, that your practice is going well, that all of your virtuous activities are flourishing. So then, of course, our gathering today is in part to have a discussion about what the actual way to train our mind is, as well as how to reduce our engagement in non-virtue and in unwholesome activities.
오다 가 첨부 눈이 제주되다 셀을 주다져야되다 오다 가로서 내가 가 첨부 눈이 첨부지레스.
And of course, there are many important activities that we are responsible for, but we could say that the preeminent one, the important within the important, is that engagement with trying to train our mind.
다 세가 버게 다 가르치 가르다 론진다고 니네 고지시 다 대어 다 버게 내서 니네 지 버시 시소나 다 여보 주주래와지 여마도 예 코반 눈에
So actually, in terms of our activities, if we can devote some time to recognizing, to understanding the nature of our mind, to understanding the reality and the potential of that, that sets us up very well to be able to achieve our goal of happiness. Whereas if we place our hope, our energy only in samsaric things, right? That's more difficult.
다 거의 로지 간디지 이나요. 어다 여포지 레와자니 템보게야 메바데 코조야 코로 잘라 코로 레드니 몽 주주소자 이자 코로 여포지 레와자 톰바시사요.
So we don't have a place within a samsaric object where we can place 100% of our hopes. We know that samsaric things are unstable. They are in a state of flux. And this is because samsaric phenomena, right, are characterized by karma and affliction, right? Therefore, they're not a stable source of hope.
다 이나요. 다 가지고 야쇼질 레와자사테 다 셀을 주다제네라. 다티니까 니까 질도 세냐모고는 레도 냐모고는 나버지 요아르텐 이나요 델리 롱토야지 요아레 델리 판 갈레갈레 니빠메 봐서야지 한조 고가지라야 요아르세.
So then where do we put our hope? We put our hope in the training of the mind. We understand that we have this temporary circumstance of our mind being under the control, being influenced by karma and affliction. But if we tap into its potential and train it, we can be free. We will be able to be free because the mind is something powerful.
다 세라이 세용되는 녀모를 그 롱토네를 그 든지 여본도 산디 다 레도 녀모 레레 녀바도 든지 이나요 갈레갈레 다 녀보도 어제도 든지가 거는 파 간디지 이나요 그 니빠메 봐서야지 요아레.
So we understand that when we cultivate the practice, then the mind can become completely free of the afflictions. When we speak about karma and affliction, then if we think of unwholesome or negative karma, we understand too that through engaging in purification with the four opponent powers, slowly, slowly, that negative karma can also be diminished.
다시부터 뭐 새로 지수 요아레. 케파이나 디바또 첨부 간에서 이나요 용왕지도 놔요 아레스.
영화칙사는?
조금해봐 니빠메봐.
네.
또 첨부 많이 봐.
So a holy being has said that the skillful practitioner knows how to make even the heavier negative karma disempowered. Disempowered. Yeah, okay.
조금해봐. 아스탈라이네 곧 사고 차야지 알아.
Yeah, 되네.
더 드리지 놔요 아레.
양결성당 야부공화선.
세시워스 디빌레 또 첨부 간디지나 케파이나.
아하.
코다 던지고 또 첨부 많이 봐. 아그송.
Dende topchempo mayimpa sukam na konsohako hyomare. Listen. So a skillful person is able to take a heavy negative karma and through engaging in the practices of purification and so forth, dilute that karma and make it into something lighter.
안에서 무식히시는 안에 녀파 추슈치이나요. 요 저거 사고질라.
The unskillful person, or perhaps we could say the person who lacks knowledge, right? They don't engage in that practice. And so even a light karma, a negative karma, can gradually become heavier and heavier.
오다테치니 뭐지요아레 갈레갈레 간줄라 토바서 그예서 오테니고 다 던지지 장 간조 대용더니 개파 이ነ세 아테 다 녀보또 여 그게 배제 또도 그 따다 신경이라서 그래서 데려왔어.
So when we say a skillful person, right, in terms of this point about karma, we could say in this context, the skillful person is one who really knows how to implement the practice of the four opponent powers.
다 던지지 다 간조 다 그냥 비도보 간시 되는 가로가로지 다 보내서 자체한 뒤와스 대대 간조 고가 첨보레스.
So, you know, whether we understand this thoroughly or not, but if we understand the principle, we can bring forth a mind of joy and understand that these practices afford us a very valuable opportunity.
다 갈래갈래 도지 세마카 위우중 걸어왔어.
So we will tamadiura.
Yeah.
So towards the end of the class, Geshe said he will tie up some of the loose ends about the Vajrasattva practice. So that will come towards the end of the class.
다 알레 덤보 로르데서 야가지 간조도 또 걸어 또다 덤보 로르디지 되는 거 노진조도 데려왔어.
So usually, of course, like in the traditional way of presenting a teaching, you do the sutra aspect first, and then you speak a little bit about tantra. So sort of honoring that tradition, Geshe is going to begin with the Lam Rim, and then towards the end of the class, the discussion will shift to the Vajrasattva.
뭐 내류 단와 가와이나 디데지 가와이나요. 디데지 하고 그러.
Yeah.
다 가와이나 내류 동보대 로 통무이 지레바 용아 내류 내들어.
내두롱아 디하고.
뭐 로주 제 롱아.
롱아. Yeah. 되네?
내들어 동보대 로 통무이 지레바 용아 지고요.
Oh, right. So whenever we speak about Tantra, I'm not asleep. I just didn't understand. So whenever we speak about Tantra, right, and this can be any of the 4 classes of Tantra, one of the first things that has to be ensured is that one is a suitable vessel for Tantra. One needs to prepare oneself in the sutric teachings to be a suitable vessel for Tantra.
당과 보게 니빠 치몬도도 만도 좋아 치원도도 만도 좀 인주시 이거 답이 나왔어. 보게 얘네 좋아요 멜 투야래. 된자자 통바타 뜻이 오래돼요.
So whether we're able to bring forth genuine feeling and engagement in our practice of the Vajrayana, whether our engagement with the Vajrayana is going to become something powerful, this very much depends in training in the common path, specifically the 3 principal aspects of definite emergence or renunciation, bodhicitta, and the correct view of emptiness.
다 몸보지 고사로 와서 간조 치료 가시겠다. 치료 가시겠으나 다 보게 얘네 보게 녀래 템보잖아. 베들 리와젠다 사자젠다 보게 노한 나오지 용근디스 가시겠더니 세기와래.
Yeah. So some of Geshe-la's friends with whom he discusses Tantra, they say that really when one engages with Tantra fully, the feeling that one has is that one has gone to a completely different world. One has gone to a completely different place from one's usual environment.
다 대조가 돼 가르래. 다 존주지세 다 좋아요. 맞지? 뒤돌 쪼도 많이 보게 좋아지. 요나 다더니 예제도 가르이나 거로 보게 내가지 아들 지세지 동의와래.
So how is it possible really to experience that genuinely, right? It's through the effective preliminary trainings in bodhicitta, through one's engagement in wisdom realizing emptiness, and then the various aspects of the tantric path, such as the visualizations, the clear light, and so forth, those will be able to be authentically experienced.
당한종엄마 단다도 주요 말에 게자치 뭐지요스. 거기다 그만까지 이나 고색깔 비다 비리체면 있자.
공부 조서. 로스. 테네. Tsongkhapa 카디네 페치티.
고색깔 비리체가 말와.
알레 로스.
비리면 가디는 거데마 자 엄마 공부라서 가시네 주요레스. 비리.
Yeah. So then one of Geshe-la's precious teachers who sadly passed away some time ago, when he was a scripture teacher at the monastery, and when the monastery was on holiday, because he didn't have to teach class, he would engage in his own study. And mostly he would read Clarifying the Intent by Lama Tsongkhapa.
다 기대디가를 오다 뭐야 좀 기대들이가 레베가 가서 오다 뚱바니 됐지 그러 라바이나 아가서 가리이나 노토그레스 짐말라리바 그즈 추르만도 라고 체르만도
그즈 추르만도사
그즈 뭐 추르만도
알레 충루 되네
가나가갈레 가나 아니 라고 체르만도
알레 right
그 대주도 저도 많이 되겠네서 지내도 알아보지.
And so one of the things that this teacher explained to his students is that my bad. So then one of the things that this teacher explained to the students was that it was the engagement and understanding of emptiness which makes everything possible. So when we hear the story about Jetsun Milarepa hiding in the ram's horn without his body getting smaller or the horn getting bigger. Things like this are possible when emptiness is realized.
我今下给什么人？是我等着去人的，是电用东把你来的，做的俺都说，俺那容易那有屏幕俺要的，也那有屏幕俺要的，弄错的通个要一些，第一通的他不给大姐说呀，搞起么的事情来是。
And also, another important point is that in order to be able to realize profound emptiness, it's very good to start with a contemplation of the emptiness of the five skandhas, the five aggregates of both oneself and others. Because those five skandhas are kind of easily discernible, this is a very good place to begin. So, some scholars say actually that we can actually come to a decent understanding quite easily, but we just don't engage properly. So any of the different skandhas, aggregates that we examine, if we kind of separate it out individually, we'll see that that particular aggregate only arises due to the coming together of several different factors. If we don't train ourselves to see like that, to examine like that, we're just going to perceive things as we see them initially. We think that there's like this assembly of aggregates, and then we start to label, this is me, this is him or her. And then through labeling that, those things, they begin to seem to become solid or stable. So, karetsorwa. Right. So many scholars explain that one's understanding of both coarser and more subtle selflessness can be determined by the conviction with which one is able to recognize that each of those aggregates arises only due to the coming together of many different factors. So many misunderstandings and mistaken minds arise because we think that those aggregates are something that can be kind of pointed to as independent, self-sufficient, and so forth. So when we are contemplating selflessness, it's very good to sort of proceed like with thinking about the selflessness of the I or the self, the selflessness of the aggregates. And then, oops. Can you mute everybody, Dave? Awesome. So one thinks about the selflessness of the I, the selflessness of the aggregates. And then once one has kind of trained in that, one can move on to the emptiness of other phenomena. So if we train in that way, and then on that basis, we are able to cultivate the path in a stable way, then we can come to some good success. So this was a little bit of a discussion of the preliminaries, and now we can come to the actual topic, but maybe some motivation. Ale, kadin rebe.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Not a meditation. I'm sorry. The preliminary prayers. So, yeah. Tenpa chom de shin she pa tra chom pa yang da pa zo pe sang ye ri pa dang shab su den pa de wa she pa je den Gampopa ke Buddhahood Kalo gyurwa lana meba ladamin ham gidemba sangye chom dende Bejawa Shakya Tupala Chazelo Chede Gyabsu Chi Ho Tenpa Chonden de Deshin Shepa Drachompa Yandapa Zobe Sangye Sheba Dang Shatsu Tenpa Dewa Shepa Jiten Chepa Chebu Deve Kalo Jurwa Lana Meba Lada Minamgi Tenpa Sangye Chonden de Bejawa Shakya Tubala Chazelo Chede Gyatso Chi Ho Tenpa Chonden de Deshe Shepa Drachompa Yandapa Zobe Sangye Jepa Dan Shatsu Denpa Dewa Sheba Jiten Chempa Chebu Deve Kalo Jorwa Lana Meba Ladam Minamgi Tenpa Sangye Chonden de Bejawa Shakya Tubala Chazelo Chede Gyatso Chi Ho. Mandala offering. Saji Pegi Choshe Mento Cha Rija Lishe Nide Gyampa De Sangye Shinde Milde Bowa Ki Joku Nanda Jila Chika Sho Idam Guru Rana Mentala Kam Niryata Yami. Refuge and Bodhicitta. Chedam Sogi Chenam La Jangzhe Badu Dani Gyatso Chi Dagi Chenyen Gipe Sunam Gi Dola Benji Sangye Joba Shon Chedam Sogi Chenam La Jangzhe Badu Dani Gyatso Chi Dagi Chenyen Gipe Sunam Gi Jola Benji Sangye Joba Shon Chedam Sogi Chenam La Jangzhe Badu Dani Gyatso Chi Dagi Chenyen Gipe Sunam Gi Jola Benji Sangye Joba I just have to, I see that one of the power cords is not very stable, so just bear with me and I'm going to make sure it's plugged in. Sorry about that. Better safe than sorry. Sorry about that. So, with the body and mind placed in a relaxed state, then we want to continue developing the motivation. And going to make the body and the mind at ease, clear, and peaceful.
노가 띵바도 잡아 놓지. 뭐다 새가 좋아도 너도 좀 해봐야지 봐. 야네라. 어? 노가 좀만 놓지요. 선바지.
Just like when the sky, through a gentle breeze, is slowly cleared away of all clouds, we see its vastness and its clarity. In this way, without the discursive, distracting thoughts and feelings, we see the clear nature of our mind.
노가 뚱바도 너는 타요네츠 야가요 가래 이나타셔요 반노지. 알아서 세대요. 그용부 자체뭐 어다 가래 여보드바 이나다 저토야 같은 거 그러죠.
Just like within the empty sky, we can place any beautiful object in the same way within the expanse of a mind that is vast, open, and unencumbered by the discursive thoughts. We can place and we can bring to perfection any good, positive quality we wish to develop.
소속 세법에 얘네 것이가 얘나 shambadu tsewa seya te likoro chunjuji mato mare tene seya te ta roa yungzul pake chato ba. O ta tandriga rungji tsachi mochi.
So, if you want to think about the power and the vastness of this mind, if we want to bring forth love and compassion within it, when that's cultivated effectively, just within our one single mind, we're able to bring forth qualities like love and compassion, which are connected to every single sentient being.
Tandriga se tiga ta pake nganzo. Shambadu niji shonchuji se kangi mitenda wa tela ta saji pusa tsuba chiga tinda. Lama kangi ngo, ido kangi ngo, to jesenpa kando kabo. Ane yabo wachi se ta yachi.
So then, from that mind, vast as the sky, infused with love, compassion, and bodhicitta, imagine that upon a beautifully arranged seat sits Vajrasattva, one face, two hands, white in color, the embodiment of all of the lamas, meditational deities, and enlightened beings.
Shandradu se she kari inayo ta te tso te ta. Onga ya koroi somato.
The minds of refuge and bodhicitta that I bring forth, it will be empowered with the blessings of this Vajrasattva deity.
Ngama noji rondo nyondo la ta ndo wari chuga se je yuzo mayi namba je. Dewa to demba ta rewa chewi ngoni ta shandro. Ani yo sombachi.
So, as we did before, imagine that together with us are all six types of sentient beings, but in human form, looking up towards Vajrasattva as the Lord of Refuge with a mind of faith, placing all one's hopes and aspirations in the mind of refuge.
Shewa tume ne sape dipa to drawa. O kanga no tendu nje mandu. Te isa teji mewa zogi. Ati cheta ta do je samba. Achelo so hata yo somato.
Think all of the negativities and obscurations accumulated by myself since beginningless rebirths in samsara are mistaken. It is not okay that I engaged in these negative actions. I am going to get rid of, to purify these negative actions.
做den zhuwa de da ge ta pu ge ta ju ge de shi gang ye yu zu pu ge se ya ge che de ane du ji sen bi gong bo nge de che ge gen du da de li li za de to ba zo yi son bi to ni sa shang ju se.
In order to be able to help all sentient beings, not just myself, clear away, purify negative karma, and reach the state of final happiness, I myself must actualize the state of Vajrasattva by realizing his enlightenment. Bring forth bodhicitta.
Do ji sen ba tu nye wing gu ne ta tu ki tu ka ne ta ge se ja chen no ji pa shu chi le ti ne nga ro so ru so so ge ta sho wo ni ma shu ne la li ji ka nge sen ji ka nge la so ba ka nga pa cha ba sha wa no ji pa sha so.
So imagine that due to this meditation and request, Vajrasattva manifests the aspect of being pleased with us, of being close to us. Light rays emanate from his heart, completely pervading the 10 directions. And these light rays fall as a rain of nectar, entering the crown aperture of ourselves and all sentient beings, completely clearing away negativities and any physical or mental suffering.
Linge di zhe gang ga pa ta ne ta li zu ma ta se zu ma ta de cha ba shi so ma ro.
Any negativities of or obscurations are completely cleared away. In this way, the body and mind are completely purified and at ease. So we'll pause there.
我大格隆的的是也没个下去，他等你等你们在谈到东北的老人哇是，那几楼我按照七八个那次得去用个得去，那去我得七八个那次得去得去要哇是，我得去刚刚用按照我得给这要嘛，所以呢，写出来那是就来的要来是。
So now we'll turn to the Lam Rim, and then at the end of the class, we'll turn back to our discussion of Vajrasattva. And also, Geshe said that he'll mention a little bit about the practice of offerings in this context. And also just wanting to clarify that we can do the practice of the offerings in such a way that one does not have to have received like an empowerment and able to do the practice in order to be able to do the practice of offering, right? This can be done by anyone. Yeah. So Geshe is not sure. He hopes, but he's not sure if this tradition is maintained widely these days. But when he was a young child in Tibet, there would always be a person from the family who was assigned early in the morning to clean the shrine and to place the offerings, fill the water bowls, and so forth. There would be someone who was assigned that task. And he thinks that probably most people are still holding this custom. So they might not know what each of the individual offerings represents or its deeper meaning. But just, anybody can build that understanding, understand the reasons for doing things, and anyone can engage in the practice of offerings. So if you ask, then what are the limitations of people who haven't received a full empowerment and Anuttara Yoga empowerment? One cannot manifest as the self-generation and emanate the offering deities and do offerings that way, right? So now we are going to turn to our discussion of the Lam Rim. Jachjadin.
이마 디런데 디나 치치 라자 돈요레 돈이사
Uh, perna ninje gomkap
말에
tomar.
대다
Uh,
디나 치치 라자
dena,
근데
chugi labja. Right. Okay. Sorry, just a moment. Just finding where we are. Sorry.
아무나 빼나서는 저기 디네요 따자나
Ale, lasa.
그죠
Yeah, tatare. Tiagadu.
어다
Perna.
같은
Yeah.
간도 저기 좋아
Mm.
빼나 니지 고가 토마 티피 고니 도송아
Tonsu.
니지 고와 쳐봐 시시시 되네 니지 배도 니지 고기 비제체노 요니 요다 sombi 현재 되네 되는니 로르르 쉐와동
So we are on page 93, about halfway down, and it reads, take, for example, meditation on compassion. In the beginning, one gains an understanding of compassion through hearing. Then, through repeated contemplation on the benefits of compassion and the reasons for meditating on it, an awareness seeking it from the depths of one's heart gradually arises.
당가로서 고야 고자발 고자야 그다 고자 시카라와스 고자테 샤 숑바도 니지간데 니지조 진데 시작인데 와스 근데
So, in order to be able to meditate effectively, right, one needs to have a correct ascertainment of the object of meditation. And here, His Holiness is explaining it using the examples of love and compassion. Just for clarity, for those of you who have the text, if you're wondering which words are the words of the fifth Dalai Lama and which words are the words of His Holiness the 14th, it's the words in bold are the fifth Dalai Lamas and the words not in bold are the 14th.
그래서 다르 좀 동보 시게 되라 니지고 숑바고 숑주지 세고 사야되도 아고서로 아니 돈이고 못다바고 사다 너 뎀바지고 사다니 용기요라 와스
Like Riknida, right? So when we speak about the objects of meditation, we can speak about them from the perspective of like two different categories. So one of these categories is going to be topics like love, compassion, bodhicitta, and so forth. And the other category is going to be objects like emptiness, impermanence, aspects of the Four Noble Truths, and so forth. So we use the word meditate on when we speak about cultivating, both of those categories of things. But the way to meditate on those two different categories, the actual mode of meditation, is done quite differently.
세제 동화도 다 자완돼 봐. 소화 첨부질려봐 일래서나. 근데 로코로 당기 다 세고로 이 지금 뭐가 수완했어.
So if we take love and compassion, for example, we think about the benefits of compassion. We contemplate it again and again, and then there will be this sort of feeling that arises. May all beings be completely separated from suffering and its causes. And eventually, that feeling is going. The mind will eventually take on the character of love and compassion, and the mind will become of the nature of love and compassion. So this can be cultivated also on the basis of one person. So, for example, let us think of a beggar with a serious disability. Perhaps he or she is missing their hands. We think about their situation. Without their hands, how do they eat? How do they drink? How do they do the things they do? Wouldn't it be wonderful if they were separated from that suffering? Wouldn't it be wonderful if they were separated from the causes of that suffering? If this is able to like pervade the mind, then the mind becomes the nature of compassion.
가시 대 소소인 간데스 요사래. 다 든지 디톤에 다 조지 단조와 대 숭요하레스.
And one of the other things that can be really helpful for being able to build this practice is thinking like, how would I feel if I was experiencing those same conditions? What would that be like for me? This can also be a very effective angle.
다 디소인 다 간조 티데 야티비테진 다 모모요하라 와서 뭐게레 마투레 네오레 다 데지 요사테 가시 소소딜이오나 간데스 소와요사래. 대소노도나 다 니지도 좀바세하데 어디용 대반다고 중요하겠어.
So we can see, you know, through the television or the computer, all of the wars, diseases, suffering, and so forth, you know, all of these terrible calamities that are troubling our world. And we just need to kind of go that little bit further and think like, not only is that terrible, but like, what would that experience be if it was me in that sort of situation? That type of contemplation can be very helpful for enhancing our love and compassion.
그래서 다 든지는 다 세코롱 좀바게 뭐려하시야 니지가 뭐려 현로야지라 좀바고 니지고세요.
So once the nature of the mind becomes loving, becomes compassionate, right? It's really bringing forth, infusing the mind with it and making the nature of the mind into the nature of love and compassion. That's what we mean when we say meditation in this aspect, when we talk about meditation on love and compassion.
다 못하고 어느 동반이 고사라 와도 덴바지도 던지 느껴지나 배나가 좀 매도인데 단데 따그러 왔어. 다 된노지 얘도 이제 이 거를 여와시지요.
So it's different though when we are contemplating impermanence, emptiness, or aspects of the Four Noble Truths, right? It's a little bit like looking at that plant Geshe has on his table, and we're seeing, what does it look like? How does it function? In other words, in this type of meditation, there is more of a separation between the object and the subject, or the object and the object possessor. I know I asked you guys, do you prefer object possessor or subject? You told me, but I've forgotten. So remind me and I'll use that one. So there's a separation between the object and the subject.
This one, 다 대대노지서 왔어. 네 못봐. 네 때네 데메 So if
we think, for example, how this plant is impermanent, changing from moment to moment, how it lacks true or inherent existence, right? That's a meditation on emptiness. And we see when we do that, there's like a separation between the object, that plant, and the object possessor or subject, ourselves as the meditator. And then there's a third type of meditation when we think about the Vajrayana, the meditation visualizing the mandala of the deity, visualizing the pure celestial abode of the deity, and so forth. And so we could say that this third type is like a visualization or imagination meditation. But when we speak about these method practices like love and compassion, it's been mentioned before, but it's worth repeating. We start with the contemplation of the benefits. Then we develop the wish. That wish transforms into a strong aspiration. Dumpa anijela. And then after that, it is a strong, joyous effort of engagement with the mind. And remember, as was said before, but remember that this fourth bit, the joyous effort, is a joyous effort, a mind engaging with delight. So it's not a drudgery type thing. That's not what's meant by effort here.
다시 어떤 맛을 쓴 거야. 가서 컨트롤 파 고제고 다 제세 가제 몸보 손도 도토나. 이 지도 정말 이나 그렇게 시에 내가도 휴체가 니바체가 요아레세 요아레스.
And so contemplating the benefits means really understanding the qualities of minds of love and compassion. The holy beings, some of them recommend that when we're angry at somebody and we go through every single little thing that they did that made us angry, that's the kind of like scrutinizing understanding of the benefits, that kind of contemplation that we want for love and compassion.
어따테레오로와스 덴보로와스 어따페나 마카시타 담볼레레 데와이나타 마칠 콘토데와 고아넬라 제건다 와신데테네 롱가만데니스 다왕가만데니스 다 마고바난데니스 그래서 베트쿠아네 데마타나 어테니 강행기야.
We're really skilled at our meditation on anger, aren't we? We can remember every single slight and unpleasant thing that somebody did to us, right? Especially if we dislike them. We'll think, yesterday they did this to me. Last year they did this to me. The year before, they disrespected me in this way. And as we contemplate that, we get more and more upset to the point that we can't even be in the same room with the other person without losing control. So it's like a scrutinizing analysis of their negativities. So we just want to apply that mind to a positive thing. We can see that if our mind is able to use scrutinizing analysis to really bring forth an understanding of why we should be angry at somebody, there's no reason that we can't use that same intelligence, that same mental power to think about all of the reasons that we have to develop positive attitudes towards others, right? We just need to shift the focus. That's all. So, of course, to realize these minds eventually, we're going to need to bring them forth in the stability of placement meditation. But really, before that, we need to cultivate a thorough understanding through analytical meditation. And there's a lot of kind of effort and attention that needs to be paid to that. So, for example, if we think about the Bodhisattva Charyavatara, that entire text by Shantideva, it's like points of analytical meditation to develop various positive minds. So when we say Dharma practice, when we say I'm practicing the Dharma, it's really important to be grounded in our understanding of what that means. Practicing the Dharma means doing things that are bringing forth positive minds like love, like compassion, like patience. So that is our goal, right? The goal of Dharma practice is skill in bringing forth the minds of love, of compassion, of patience. And so when we evaluate our Dharma practice, the primary consideration is whether we've been able to improve our cultivation of those minds. Yeah.
Yeah.
So Geshe heard recently about an interaction between two people, which he found really funny. And so the interaction was one gentleman said to his friend, this is like a holy month, right? I guess it was Sagadar or whatever. This is like a holy month. So I read Words of My Perfect Teacher 6 times. And then his friend said, "What's wrong with you? why would you read words of my perfect teacher 6 times? And then he replied, what do you mean? What's wrong with me? And so, sorry, I was a bit too dramatic. So anyways, he shouted at him, Geshe said. So I was just trying to embody that, you know. He said, what do you mean? What's wrong with me? And so it shows, right, that 5 or 6 times of reading through words of my perfect teacher, how beneficial was it, right? So it's great that he read the text. Let us be clear, but we want to make sure that when we bring forth effort in something like that, it brings us closer to the goal of our Dharma practice, closer to developing those positive minds. So we say that, you know, we are like mind scientists, that Dharma is a science of the mind, right? So if that is the case, then through our practice and through cultivating with that understanding, there's no reason that we can't kind of recognize scientifically how to how to tap in to those mental potentials, right? How to bring them forth. There's no reason that we can't figure out how to do that. So, I mean, it's great that people read a lot of things. It's great that people do a lot of years in retreat. But Geshe is just saying he's not necessarily impressed with how many years in retreat somebody spent or didn't. He's more impressed by whether they were able to tame their mind. That's actually more important. It's actually said that the time we spend in retreat is the training for when we come out of the retreat. So the measure of a successful retreat is an engagement, an improved engagement with that world outside of retreat.
It's
the same with what we do here, right? With our own studies and discussion of the Dharma. Whether that has really become meaningful or not depends upon our improved engagement with the people around us, with the people that we are engaging with every day. So most of you are working people, right? In this part of the world, most of us, we have to work to support ourselves. So there's no reason that we shouldn't use the work environment as the main place where we're trying to implement the things that we learn in the class, right? Geshe thinks that yeah, he's saying that he thinks that like when you're in retreat, it's a little bit dangerous actually to think that you're farther along than you actually are, because you're by yourself, right? So there's no one there that's irritating you. It's quiet, so there's no disturbances, and you can just focus on reading your sadhana. You can recite the practice as loud as you want without any problems, and you're not put in any situations, in many situations where you're confronted with something unpleasant. So it might be pretty easy to deceive ourselves when we're in retreat. Hey, I'm doing pretty great. So just to go back to where we began, then analytical meditation to bring forth these minds is very important. And so with a mind like compassion, this can bring forth a recollection of Chandrakirti's Entering the Middle Way, where the glorious Chandrakirti says, compassion is important in the beginning, the middle, and the end. In the beginning, it's like the seed. In the middle, the compassion is like the water and fertilizer that nourishes the seed. And in the end, it is like the harvest that is reaped from the seed.
다 스질 제바 맞잖아. 그다 바디다 어차피 쇼기 슐로가 가시냐 니서스 요아레스. 강가 니지 첨벌 주주 제바 제바 봐스.
So, these are part of kind of a collection of 2 or 3 shlokas that the glorious verses, I'm sorry, that the glorious Chandrakirti, composed really just about the importance of the mind of compassion at all points on the path.
돈보 니지 첨벌 코를 제바 제제. 되는 니지를 여와서 신을 때는 소소를 제바 제.
So then, in terms of how we cultivate this compassion, the first step there's a very large wasp here, but Geshe said he'll make his way out on his own. So then in terms of how we cultivate compassion, first we get a general understanding of compassion, and then we want to get a little bit more specific. So we can think about the 3 different types of compassion.
저는 세제 졸라메비 니지 뭐지? 아니 마타 세제 마타 발라메비 니지. 아니 세제
So the 3 types of compassion in this context, the first one is the compassion that has sentient beings as its object of focus. The second one is the compassion that has phenomena as its object of focus. And the third one is the objectless compassion. I say objectless. Some translators prefer non-referential compassion. That's the third type. And the most powerful of these is the third type, that objectless or non-referential compassion. Yeah. So then the reason for this, of course, is simple. It's because we understand that the root of all of our problems is the self-grasping ignorance, and the objectless compassion incorporates aspects of contemplation of selflessness, and so that is able to address the very root of our difficulties. Therefore, this third type of compassion is powerful. So in the text, it doesn't speak about objectless or non-referential love. It just speaks of objectless compassion. But Geshe said the principles of objectless compassion, you can apply those to love and do a meditation on objectless love. That's totally okay. So if you want to minimize your karma and your afflictions, Vajrasattva practice is very effective, but even more important than Vajrasattva is cultivating the mind of compassion. This is the most powerful purification imaginable. So we remember from the Jatakamala, right, the Jataka stories of the previous lifetimes of the Buddha as a bodhisattva. One time the bodhisattva was actually in the hell realm. And this hell realm that he was in was one of very intense suffering. And normally it's said that if one falls into that hell, one has to remain there for a very long time until the negative karma is burned off. But the bodhisattva, when his companion in hell was being beaten, he brought forth... Ale. Sorry. Geshe, so the Buddha in his previous lifetime, Geshe says he wasn't a bodhisattva yet. Sorry. Sorry, my bad. So Geshe's English is getting better. That's a good thing. So the being who became the Buddha, I should say it like that. The being who became the Buddha, at that time, seeing his companion experiencing that suffering, getting beaten in hell, he thought, may I take on that suffering instead. He expressed that. And because of that very strong compassion, right, he was immediately liberated from hell.
어다 뭐더 내가 저기 루소시 레기 루소시 먹을 서ችን 걸 지슈 그래.
Yeah.
그거 다 가지고 마선 이송하래서 다 레로스.
So it was said that at the moment that he brought forth that mind of compassion, right, the tortures in that hell are meted out by like these minions, right? But they arise because of the mind. So when the being who became the Buddha expressed this, please all take on his punishment, the minion replied, every being creates the causes of their own suffering, and every being must create the suffering result. But his compassion became even stronger. And at that moment that the compassion filled his mind, the minion just dissolved, right?
다 되네 주때 다 된도네 된도마도 다 계속해져요.
And so from that point on, the being who became the Buddha, he went from happy rebirth to happy rebirth all the way until he achieved enlightenment.
밑에 제 하고 가라와스 근데 니 지슈로 버셔 뒤에 내소를 내가 내가 강가받고 니밤에 가서 쳐서
So we have to understand the mechanics behind this story, which is that when you bring forth a really powerful mind of compassion, that's an incredible purification. And so in that moment, all of the causes for having to remain in hell were completely cleared away. That's why it happened like that.
다 되지에 버텨가래. 스터네 법아 도면이나요. 다 갈래 뭐뭐 자네 타마 저와 쇼망이 선지야데 이지 집이까지라 될 수 있어서 저거지라 저
And also remember the story of Asanga, right? Yeah. So it goes back to it goes back to a retreat, right? He was 12 years in retreat, Asanga. That's a long time. But when was he able to see Maitreya? It was that moment when he saw that dog with the terrible wound. And when he brought forth that strong mind of compassion, that's when he was able to perceive Maitreya.
Ale,
sorry. So Geshe said, of course, it's not that the retreat wasn't beneficial. He created a lot of causes, but it's just that the culminating cause was seeing that dog, bringing forth unbearable compassion. That created the situation where he could actually perceive Maitreya. So actually, this advice holds for us as well. When we are discontent, when we're experiencing a lot of obstacles, when we're going through a rough time, our go-to should be the practices of love and compassion. That's ultimately what's going to help us. We can do other practices as well, but our go-to during that difficult time should be love and compassion always.
아니 근데 거치 요런 지색이 됐어. 나 지금바에 얘다 가게 갈 속에야 매스. 예, 저는 이제 돼서 거 대기바이지마 표도하고 싶으세요.
So His Holiness the Dalai Lama, this is quite some time ago, His Holiness the Dalai Lama was asked to go to a particular part of Dharamsala. And this particular part of Dharamsala was known as like, I don't know, I guess I would translate it as like the ghost graveyard or something like that. It was a very kind of scary place that was said to have spirit disturbances. So the people requested His Holiness, like, can you go down and perform some sort of ritual? People like elaborate rituals, right? So they were asking, can you perform some elaborate ritual? His Holiness said, all I can really do is go down there and think about compassion. So it was said that His Holiness went down to that place, meditated on compassion, and immediately there was great benefit. There was no more disturbances.
내가 그거 요번에 아주 듣지 바로 그러네가 시키던데 이나요. 근데 이제 단에 그로 소설 기고가나 기고더 맛이 영화가 저던 내가 시디아니 이제 손바스 손도와이스.
So he said that when he was there, these unseen beings, he thought they've created these causes of suffering, but they don't know how to kind of like free themselves from that suffering, and so they have to experience it again and again. How pitiful these beings are, and he really brought forth a mind of compassion for them. That is what really made the difference.
다테니지 배 가세 다소노토나 다 로메바다 가워지도 고자야라 깔레메바시 텐데 유무스기로 왔습니다.
So the more profoundly that we understand the benefits of compassion, the more naturally we'll want to develop it. We'll develop sort of a liking of the practice of compassion.
다 배에도 니네 손을 시 먹기 바래. 고추 그런다. 레레 여보 제바 이나. 다가 롱기 다 좀메비 소아도 다 세이나고 porque 니가 실고 과로야 레레레 두았어.
You know, and in a way, even a scrutinizing explanation of the benefits is not totally necessary, because we can taste the experience of compassion, which is that when we meditate on compassion effectively, all the self-concern that was causing our stress, our unpleasant feelings, our discursive thought, that's just naturally going to fall away. Sorry, so we are back to the text. Yeah, Hakusung. Oh. So one must have also, through further striving meditation, the awareness seeking compassion and the compassion it seeks no longer remain separate. The original mind, which gained an understanding of compassion, transforms into compassion itself. So Geshe is clarifying, we talked about the two different styles of meditation. Depending on your object of meditation, this explains that first style. So generally, we can understand the principle here that the way that meditation functions when we cultivate the method side of the path and the way that it functions when we cultivate the wisdom side of the path, this is a little bit different. So one must develop the practice that shifts every single perspective to that object of meditation that thinks how terrible it is that all sentient beings are tormented by suffering. Thus, one needs conviction in this from the depths of one's heart, gained through intense familiarization. It is not possible if one has shaky conviction. So to develop this intense conviction, what we can suggest here is that don't just think of the suffering of others as separate from yourself. Also think, if I were in such a situation, what would that feel like? A comprehension of the intensity of that suffering will make the compassion more powerful. So if we haven't developed our own conviction in renunciation, in definite emergence, and our own wish to be free, then wishing others to be free will be no more than lip service. So it's important to develop that as part of the story here. And so once we have that understanding ourselves, if we then implement the parts about seeing sentient beings as precious, as close to us, seeing them with affectionate love, with a mind that perceives them as attractive, naturally that wish for freedom will transfer over to them very easily. Yeah. Okay. Therefore, one must repeatedly engage in analysis and study from the outset. Thus, in dependence upon the wisdom arisen from hearing, one sequentially develops the wisdom arisen from contemplation, and then the wisdom arisen from meditation. Through hearing, one generally comes to understand the Dharma. In particular, through hearing the Oh, sorry. Yeah, so Geshe will stop there. Through hearing, one generally comes to understand the Dharma.
다 여보하고 가르다서 tum바니도 담에 이나요.
Mhm.
티주도 소주도 고주서요 알아봤어.
Yep.
티주니까 tum바니도 뭐다 또케데 겜보레서 야레스 요요요 아레스.
Tupa Shikpo
비주가라.
Right. So
티주기 싫어. 소주기 싫어 써요 알아봐.
So when we speak about emptiness and selflessness, we often use the language, the wisdom arisen from hearing, the wisdom arisen from contemplation, and the wisdom arisen from meditation. But for most practitioners to have genuine wisdom arise only from hearing, just from that first step, it's only going to be the rare practitioner who experiences it that way. So, to somebody, right? Many practitioners, on the other hand, will be able to bring forth a genuine wisdom during the training in contemplation. This is a lot more common. And similarly, many practitioners will only have that genuine wisdom arise through that training in meditation. So Geshe said there can't be an answer, like a definitive answer for everybody, which hearing, contemplation, or meditation, when is that going to arise? It really depends upon the particular situation of each individual practitioner. So we speak, normally about the capacity, right? We talk about capacity and affinities. Here it depends upon the capacity of the individual. It also depends upon the imprints of the individual, right? Are there wholesome imprints sort of light or deeper or middling or deeper or more profound? So with the first example, right, having that genuine wisdom arise through hearing, we can immediately think about the Buddha's close disciples, Shariputra and Modgalyayana. Shariputra and Modgalyayana, it was through a single verse of Dharma that they were able to bring forth a genuine realization of selflessness. So they're the example of this first type of practitioner. Yeah. So there's so many different experiences of how that unfolds. So just continuing on, through hearing, one generally comes to understand the Dharma, in particular through hearing the basket of discipline, so that's the Vinaya Pitaka, and practicing its subject, the training in ethical conduct, one stops misdeeds. Through listening to the basket of sutras, one gains ascertainment of the training in meditative stabilization. Then, mental distractions are pacified and awareness abides steadfast on the given focal object. Through that, one is able to give up what is meaningless. Through comprehensively hearing the subject matter of the basket of manifest knowledge, that's the Abhidharma Pitaka, which is the wisdom realizing selflessness, then the wisdom of contemplation and meditation arise in one's continuum. Acquainting oneself with those, one progressively perfects familiarization until one attains nirvana. Therefore, the way of hearing is, as said in the sutras, listen well, thoroughly, and remember. So on the basis of studying these words by His Holiness here, we can understand which of the baskets of the Tripitaka are related to which of the three higher trainings in ethics, higher trainings in concentration, and higher training in wisdom, right? That's made clear here.
Bomboshi Chimbuchi was,
Yeah.
Temazoela, Litembochi, Lapa Tembochi, Tare Tembochi, so good, Tenuji.
So the three higher trainings in ethics, concentration, and wisdom, they're said to be like the things necessary to cut down a very strong and poisonous tree. One needs to have a healthy body, one needs to have a strong arm, and one needs to have an axe which the arm can wield to really cut through the tree. So it's like that.
Oh, that is the Tosuna, that Daniel and this is Yina, Lavasog, Zomatoji, that in Yamares.
Again?
Lavasog, Mevazomotojaga, Nandoni Mojiyama.
So there is no affliction that cannot be destroyed through the practice of the higher trainings in ethics, concentration, or wisdom.
This one, what and this one, Titina, Tipa sheds a Chitation and Dole, Tesilesma, Lebara, Daniela, Ila Zushi, Kabiba, Chuche, Shadow, Atabi, Negishes, Ponte.
Abandon the three faults of a vessel, being upside down, dirty, and having a leaky bottom. The first, an upside down vessel, refers to the time of listening to the teachings when one is physically present but is either falling asleep or one's mind wanders outside. If this is the case, then since our ears and mind are not focused, nothing is retained by our awareness.
What are you Shirang and Zopita, what you go out was, they want Shabala, Negishes, Pon. So
Geshe said that what's following here in the text, is actually explaining how the three faults of the vessel, we're probably all familiar with that, upside down, leaky, and contaminated, that those are overcome through thinking of hearing, contemplation, and meditation in the context of antidotes, as well as cultivating these 6 discernments. So Geshe, So Geshe said we're going to pause the Lam Rim here on page 94 because there is still some Vajrasattva to cover, and Geshe wants to make sure that we get through the last of Vajrasattva. And so just to clarify, especially in the context of Vajrasattva, most of the practices that are being described here can be cultivated by people whether you have an empowerment or not. For those who have the necessary empowerment, if you have the time, it's really good to do a practice of Vajrasattva that is complete. And by complete, Geshe means one that incorporates a front generation as well as a self generation. So another thing, and we'll see this in some practices, is that when you do the self generation, it's not always necessary to have a front generation as well. It's not necessary that it's not in every case that you'll have a self generation and a front generation. And so just to speak about the offerings, when we're actually setting out the physical offerings, as we're arranging the bowls and pouring the water, the reciting Om Ah Hum is considered very important to prevent any obstacles or hindrances to the offerings. And so the reason that we recite Om Ahum as we're actually making the offerings, we might say, well, I bless the offerings later anyway. So when I'm actually physically setting them out, why do I need to do this? The reason is that there are beings present that may want to immediately take possession of the offerings. If they manage to do that, then when we make the offerings, because they're claiming part ownership of it, I guess, the power is going to be less. It's going to be diminished.
다 대셔 실로 다 실로 규마 되와지 또 뭔가 쪽에든 어마 위라에 같이 뭐래. 실로 디디지.
So don't think that, we can wait to bless the offerings when we actually start the sadhana session. When you're actually physically setting the offerings out, just, doing the simple practice of reciting Om Ahum, Om Ahum, Om Ahum is very important to prevent any hindrances from arising.
tani 다 대미 하거나 여보여 와서 어머 아고 엄바데 아고 세르실로 잡이아도 키와 피비가라. 아니 뭐 림보테 파타는 림보진도 왔어. 뭐 요조 된다 대지 강 체바도 체비메도 강가 어머 아고 셀 발류전도 왔어.
Yeah. Konso chibagi ming Om Ahum Namla Lutsares. Yeah. Yes. So Geshe said that when you see the importance of Om Ahum for blessing the offerings, if you're observant, you'll see that actually when you look at the mantras for making the offerings, it's usually Om, and then the name of the offering, Argam or Pajam, Ahum, for the blessing of the offerings. So we see Om Ahum is included in there, but also for actually making the offerings, when you have longer mantras with like Pratica Soha or whatever, the Om Ahum is still included in that. So this shows you the importance of this mantra.
다 다시기네 버게서 그 배제 두기나 다 게파 송게텔라 게 송게텔 메 라메도 문다오 메 문다오 야레스
로스
간데 초 드즈치마 초 라초 라초보
차보 로스
초 드즈크데게
알레 로스
드즈치마 나들 메
로스 디차규라.
야샤지.
So in the practice of Kriya or action tantra, the mantra recited to dispel hindrances. So it's known as the mantra which compels the wrathful ones. This is what it sounds like to me. The mantra which compels the mantra ones. It's good if I get these things before, but it's something like that. That's the essence of the meaning. There's a different way that mantra is described in Anuttara Yoga Tantra. Minkarire. Lamigula?
아니 쇼차비 까라 아니 쇼비 까라 tumba니 때 tum뱅원에서 가서 파통주 제거도 왔어 또주 제와라 인지 민지 가서 넣어 너네 인지 소소 고만들이 요 거를 스테케자 침보치레스
알레 톰파 소소 파샤이디 콘소 톰파 나올라 팀고레 돈다 다 보면 돼 세계에서 보면 돼
나저 인지 민지 체바 표와라 체바 송아 용아 셰바 너지 내가 지기도 왔어 yes 체바 송아라 인지 민지 소소 노를 체바 요 거르베스
알레 소소 요 거르베스
디든데 요 거르베스 네스 디데
right 됐네
데 좋아지레스 아데
알레 so sorry so when we pick 고통성 so 양결승당 I'm sorry I don't understand what Geshe was trying to say
네스 저거가 되와스 송아 용아 셰바 스네 요거 되와스
디숨로 yeah
Yeah,
right. Okay, right. So when we speak about the offerings, we talk about blessing, cleansing, purifying, and generating the offerings. So one question that might arise is, if I'm doing the practice of the offering with the blessing, cleansing, purifying, etc., do I actually need to have physical offerings set out? This is one doubt that might come to mind. Right. And so if you're lazy, that's a caveat. If you're lazy, you don't actually need to have physical offerings set out to engage in this practice. You don't. But if you don't have physical offerings set out, then what are you purifying? What are you cleansing? What are you blessing? Right? Maybe that question comes up. So if you want to do this practice of the offerings, but you don't have the physical means to actually do them personally, what you can think as you go through the cleansing, purifying, and so forth is think of a place where offerings are always made. So, for example, you can think of like Sera or one of the other great monasteries where offerings are definitely made every day. And you can just imagine those offerings in your mind as you go through the practice. So, you cleanse those offerings and so forth on the basis of thinking about the offerings in Sera or the Dharma Center or that other place. But then once you've dissolved everything into emptiness and you come to the point of generating the offerings, you visualize that those offerings are generated in front of you. So you can visualize them there in the room where you are, even if you haven't physically made the offering. So the appearance aspect of one's mind, contemplating emptiness, we can think of this kind of manifesting in the form of lights that transform into visualized offerings in front of us in the room where we're practicing. So remember in the sadhana, right, it did this practice sort of step by step. So we visualize that from emptiness appear 8 ohms. Those 8 ohms transform into the 8 offering vessels, so the bowls. Then within them, the seed syllable melts into light and transforms into the offering. So it can unfold like that. So then, when you hear that this is a possibility, then you might think, well, then, like, we actually don't need to set offerings out at all, ever, since we can all do this mentally. Like, why bother putting out physical offerings? So that's clever. That's a clever way of thinking about it. But if we're insisting on never making the offerings physically, that's not really a good thing, is it? Geshe thinks of it this way. In the situation where one is not able to set out physical offerings, one can contemplate in this way and then from emptiness generate them. That's an opportunity to cultivate mainly the accumulation of wisdom. However, when he's at home and is able to set out the different offerings physically, and as he's cleaning the bowls, he can imagine purifying negativities and so forth, and then actually setting out the offerings. This is mainly the accumulation of merit. And so we need the accumulation of both of those, merit and wisdom. So that's the reason why we do actually need to set out the offerings physically sometimes. And when we have these understandings about why things are done, hopefully that makes the process of making the offerings more enjoyable for us, right? It becomes more lively, more entertaining. Loso. And when we say the importance of understanding that things are emanated by mind, especially for beginners, it's important to clarify this. When you see wrathful deities or yidams trampling other beings underfoot, trampling other beings maybe even that look like the form of different kinds of devas or deities underfoot, it's really important to understand that that being trampled underfoot is an emanation that is manifesting from the yidam's mind. It is not separate from the yidam.
Pogezone, that net just a carriers. Talavainas, Tendriga, essentially never she can reach in a mewas a nipayo, she be that remato, cosenti and that chikamares, tangit.
So we should understand that the wrathful deity is not actually kind of like trampling some sentient being under its foot and causing it difficulty. It has manifested the appearance of a sentient being underfoot to help the practitioner of the yidam have the confidence that it can overcome harm by any seen or unseen being. This is the purpose.
What I teach you, was what I think it has Lama, she would tombat kanga shikit.
So this is something not just Geshe-la's opinion, but something shared and advised by many holy beings.
What I tell when you want to ask, and it to watch it over the Okoro,
So can you change Geshe Medusa? So that's important, you know, because if people lack experience, they can look and it seems maybe like the yidam is like a little bit scary or mean, right? It's causing these other sentient beings harm, right? So if we understand the principles behind that, we won't have that kind of misunderstanding.
And this
is also something, you know, that Geshe said, you know, some of you may be able to share to beginners who maybe see something like that and don't understand it. This can be really helpful for dispelling misconceptions. And whatever practice we are doing, the three samayas are also something very important. Oh. Right. The first is the yes. Right. Okay, dinso sum lao sho. Tambodi? Nipa? Sum? Kecheshia.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. Sumba? Chaja su yene tukyo mare. Tuksena chaja rebe. Yeah, then chaja. Ale. Right. Dene sung. Jubu. Right. Okay. So there's three samayas that we can think about in the context of this. There is a holy body samaya, a holy speech samaya, and a holy mind samaya. The holy body samaya is represented by the form of the deity's body and the mudras, the gesture that the deity is performing. The speech samaya is represented by the bell that many of the deities are holding, and the mind samaya is represented by the dorje, or the vajra that many deities are holding. Yeah, hagosun. Yeah, hagosun. And then also, so in addition to having those three samayas in place of holy body, speech, and mind, when one is arising as the self-generation, understanding that the deity that is arising is inseparable from all of the lamas, the spiritual teachers, all of the meditational deities and enlightened beings. They are of one nature. So this it sort of wraps up some extra points that Geshe wanted to present about the self-generation aspect of the Vajrasattva meditation. And so that will bring us then next time, so not next Sunday, but the Sunday after, along with the Lam Rim, Geshe will present a little bit about the front generation in the Vajrasattva practice and why that's important. We've gone through most of the important things already in the context of the full commentary. So Geshe is just saying that what he's sharing now are enhancing points. He forgot something.
다 뭔지야 나로서 로서서 넣을수 있다니 거야. 쇼월수 있다니 가지고 논진열을 제거서 왔어.
Loso.
내 오요 몇 개자요. 막 세인을 제주고요. 왔어.
One thing that he wanted to be absolutely clear about, because people actually have been sending questions about it, if one has not had a full empowerment or highest yoga tantra empowerment, one can still do, especially with Vajrasattva, the visualization on the crown or the visualization of the front generation. This is absolutely acceptable.
근데 세인이 제바 피가라. 아니 제바 운본이래 년도를 모여야레스.
Ale.
Pena cheme piwaina.
Yes.
Cheme medure. Cheme piwaina.
Yeah.
Cheme de zo megumbol pigawas.
Right.
De do nyondol yiga yila yo dewa shigawas.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
mega dewa cheba chisheso. Mila yo dane dewa cheba chisheso.
Right.
De piwana dene.
Yes.
Deji tege ya so to ga ka chimores. Cheba pivikala.
Mare, so tambo so wang ye dang me the cheba pubekabla kepar yeres then the kepar kandes dus di yeres
다다 관계 제 줘야 되러 왔어. 또 차서 왔어.
ale los
다 관계 제 줘야 돼. 소소소 제반 널 제바 피비가라. 제바 피비가变前面피가로 왔어.
yeah
前面피비가라. 파쇼 피사가 예때라 대화 여부 시에서 나와 여부 시에서 무슨 얘기 같이 뭐 사매게 되어.
So one of the important things too, so even if we're doing the practice on the base of the front generation, if we are offering the lamp, for example, we imagine that the lamp is being offered to the eyes of the deity, and also the lamp can be said to be an offering to the mind of the deity. As we offer this up, it's important to think that the deity, also if it's the front generation, brings forth a mind of great bliss. Uncontaminated great bliss.
umbo mandawa umbo tombo ngaraji mandawa mego umbo ji yi du nyondo na yi umbo ji yi du nyondo ji umbo ji yi du nyondo.
Oh, right.
umbo ni nyondo nyondo.
So what we want to do is when we offer each of the offerings, so we offer the lamp to the eyes, we imagine that this is offered to the eyes, but also to the mind that generates great bliss. When we offer the incense, which is offered to the nose sense faculty, we also imagine it being offered to the mind, which brings forth great bliss. So you imagine each of those sense consciousnesses together with the mind is part of that picture. That's very important.
that 주마시 뭐 피비가라 조나 용볼 피비가 되네 된다 아파 좀벌리
And we can expand the process of the offering even beyond that. So we can offer incense, for example. Imagine offering it to the nose sense consciousness and also the arising of great bliss in the mind. But we can then imagine that this incense that we have set out is completely pervading all of the 10 directions with pure smells, and any unclean smells and associated unpleasantness is completely cleared away.
다 된다 드리지레스 umbo 대화시에서 umbo 문다와 야라 와 대지 뭐시나 야 보야레스.
So it's good to know which it's good to know which of the offerings are connected to which of the sense consciousnesses, and also to know that when that is made, what is arising within the mind. So that concludes the discussion of that. So we will end the session here. So if you need to go after the dedication, please feel free, but you're also welcome to stick around for questions. So with a mind of joy, let us dedicate the merits. Jangsho Zemjo Rinpoche Maje Banam Chejoche Chewa Nyamba Meba Yong Gone Gondo Belwa Sho Toni Dawa Rinpoche Maje Banam Chejoche Chewa Nyamba Meba Yong Gone Gondo Belwa Sho Jambe Bao Jita Jemba Dang Kundu Zambo Deyan Dejinde Deda Gungi Jesu Dalo Chir Gewa Dida Tamche Raptu Mo Duzun Shebe Gyawa Tamche Ge Ngwa gangla chotu nga ba de dagi gewe tsawa di kun kyan zambo jeji ratu ngo wa di gangri rawe kowe jingam di bedang dewa malu jongwe ne chenre ziwan tenzin gyatso yi shape si de badu tengyo chi. So we'll pause there and we invite any questions.
I see B has a question.
Yes, B, go ahead. I'm sorry if I don't call on you. I'm in like this stage where my eye doctor wanted me to wear progressives and I refuse. So I'm constantly like putting my reading glasses on, but that makes you all blurry. So yes, B, go ahead.
That's okay. I can't read.
Sorry about that.
On, actually. Yeah. Thank you. I would like to ask about this whole concept of manifestation. If I don't think too closely about it, we oftentimes say, oh, the Buddha manifests this, Bodhisattva manifests this, our guru manifests this. If I don't think too closely about it, then it is no problem. But when I think closely about it, I don't know what that means. Maybe one way of
yeah, so you mean like this, I think it's this word that the Tibetans give as nampa dumpa. It's often translated when it's written down as manifesting the aspect of something. Is that the one you're talking about, B?
Well, this thought came to me when Geshe was explaining about how the being that was being stepped on.
Right.
From his own manifestation. So it's no different from his own mind, so he's not stepping on anybody else.
Yes. Yeah, okay, no, that's cool. So that's kind of the context that you're thinking. Okay, let me put this to Geshe B and we'll see what he says. Nganso di tsik chikyore nampa dumpa dabo chikyore. Nampa tumpa roa lama di nyungwa res nampa tumpa res. Ini nganso yandi yidam ladin so koronso semchen konso supo ola yomares di koronso semgi trupares konso semgi nampa dhumpares nampa dhumpa dunda karires.
자네 되지. 울 내줘야 되지, 봐. 넘바 덤바세나. 넘바 다바세나. 넘바 다바 이제.
넘바 다바 알레 치체나.
넘바 다바를 뭐 건조요 걸어보게 모두 듣는 넘바 다차를 마도.
Yeah.
선지전다 강게 선지전다 레디가 말았어.
No, so sorry, B, can you explain? Yeah, no, sorry. Can you explain what exactly it is you don't understand? Maybe that's a better angle for me to question it. Because he just repeated what he said before, which is that, you know, these are not actual sentient beings underfoot, right? These are manifesting the aspect of those from mind so we can understand their ability to overcome the afflictions. But I don't think that's what you're looking for.
Yes, that's oftentimes how it is explained. But if we really think about it, those words are just words.
I mean, the best we have is words to describe things, right? Like,
I know. I think I'm so blurry on this subject that I can't even formulate my question properly. So maybe one way to think about this is that we say that two things, their relationship either can be causal or one entity. So when A manifests B, so are they one entity or causal relationship?
Okay. Yep. Yes. No, I think that's a good way to try to unpack it. Let's see what happens. Nganso perna nganso di nampa tumpa denso konso supogi ola semshen jendak denso yore roa. Namki nganso gyu dang jebu chik yore roa. Ine di gyu dang jebu mares di ngo chik res lagi semdang ngo chik dapores di samlo tangna yagadus.
Yeah,
Ngo chik re.
Yeah. So
Geshe said exactly. They are of the same nature as the deity's mind, just showing the different aspect of those sentient beings underneath. Gyudang Jebu Mare,
Yeah.
rather than a cause and result situation.
다 이나요. 이나요 때 매바줘야 선생님이 지금 마요 알아봤어. 내가 시 되겠지. 제티브레 되어레스 코로.
Perna kolo demshok lawang chu
다들 다솔라 그 말아봤어. 실라소소소소 매바줘야지 알아.
But Geshe said that there is a way that we can think about it in terms of a cause and result as well, which is when many of the origin stories of many of these deities, right? When they had to arise in a particular wrathful form, it's an enlightened being arising in a particular wrathful form to subdue certain demons. At that time, there was a cause and result relationship.
그래서 배는딘디와 단지 단지 알아봤어.
Loso.
단지 그 매바줘야 돼. 저 숨부셔야 돼. 생질 내바지게.
Yeah.
예 코로야. 여보쳐야 돼. 단지 코로긴 지분다고 지래 되어레스.
So if we think of most secret Hayagriva, for example, the origin story is that he was initially like a yaksha, right? And then through being tamed and transformed, it became this deity Hayagriva. So that's the origin of it is a cause and effect thing, even though in its current way, we may think of it differently. But when we think of most secret Hayagriva post-enlightenment, and we see in the deity's form, they're like all of those beings being trampled underneath his holy feet, we understand that those are not actually separate sentient beings. They are simply aspects of his mind. They are, so in this way, they are of one nature.
Okay. In the Tantra, when they say, okay, the syllable home then arise into a deity, is that one entity or causal?
Okay. Nganso gyugi nangala hum dang hum ladi chagires, hum di dang ladi gyudang drebu dabores konso ngo chikres.
호텔와 다대 가르세커 다 호텔도 다 저도 리본다 와서 먼저서 다비가 또 홍시에 그거 아래 호텔라 때네 하늘 하트셔 와서.
So Geshe thinks it's better to think about it as cause and result from the perspective of ourself as the visualizer, as the meditator, because the hum is what we bring forth as the seed syllable, right? So seed means the cause of the result, which is the fruit of that arising as the deity. But when we speak from the side of the being that's already enlightened, rather than the person who's doing the practice, there's no separation between the hum and the deity, right? There's no separation between.
Does the word manifestation and emanation, do they have the same meaning?
I don't understand why you're asking that. I'm lost.
Well, actually, this is another aspect which is kind of like puzzle me. In the Kakyu Mahamudra teaching, they talk about the 4 pointing out instruction. I think it is number 3, where they talk about the world is a manifestation from the mind.
Okay, and how are we looping this into emanation and versus manifestation? I'm lost.
So that kind of talking, is it the same as what we are talking here about a deity manifesting an entity that he's stepping on, or is it a whole different thing? Is it something different? It's not the same because the word is the same. I think they use the word manifest.
I'm totally lost, B. I'm really sorry.
It's all right.
I don't understand how these two things are coming together at all.
It all has to do with people saying that something coming from someone's mind, something coming, manifesting or emanating from someone's mind.
Right.
So yeah, It's all right. I will be more prepared.
I'm
not
sorry.
prepared.
Maybe you better
the
write me an
question.
email and then I can think about how best to ask it because I'm not sure where you're going with this, to be honest.
Yeah, I'm not prepared with these last questions. Next time, I'll get the actual wording that they use.
Sounds
Then
good.
I can ask it more clearly. Thank you
Sounds
so
good. Yeah,
much.
sorry about that, but save it for
No,
next
no
time.
problem. No
worries.
problem. Thank you. Thank you.
No problem. Anybody else?
So we have two questions, one in the chat, but I think the person who asked may have departed. Yeah, so maybe we can answer them by email. There's also one in YouTube. So
Yeah.
Carol is asking, I understand how developing compassion benefits us, but how does our compassion benefit others? Did His Holiness the Dalai Lama benefit the ghosts by his compassion being so powerful that the ghosts developed this too?
Okay. Ningje kola labna rwa nganso ningje gi gomjaya di nganso kandes pengiris sebuse kyangre tua ine semshin jendag kandes pengiris di apo koma soa perna jaw rumbuche gi drungdi ko domdre gi sache chibgyor nangne dene ningje gomne dene koronso chatsangwa kange mepaso pares di kandes drogidis jaw rumbuche ningje gomila tene koronso gi semla yang ningje ke tubsons ko ningje gomya di jendag kandes pensons.
말에 다 된다 문다 지금 그야레스. 저 담바 리지가 드리니 지금 발라 때네. 파쇼데 코로세 저와찬 여보차 리지 용그야레스.
로스. 파쇼 나베케게.
시절라 때네.
Yeah.
리지 요 사자티 맞네. 본로야 되는 거 용그야레스.
Podroesena Dimitri. So, you know, sometimes it works like this. So the blessing of a holy being, like a realized meditator, their meditation on compassion bestows a wave of inspiration or a blessing, and that will pacify the anger or the disturbance of any sentient beings. Sometimes what happens is that through the meditation on compassion, it's more like a mode of protection, that because of the power of the compassion, those beings that would cause harm, they're not able to abide in that place.
로소. 카드 페스나 야 리지를 카드 페야 용거 알았어. 아니 우리 리지를 내도가 메게나 사자티를 마데네 오고.
And this really depends upon the level of fortune of the beings that are causing the disturbance. So if there's something of good roots there, then maybe through the powerful meditator bringing forth compassion, they're also able to experience some compassion in their mind and be subdued. But in the case of like harmful beings that don't have, you know, like any sort of, don't have that root of positivity, the compassion isn't going to be able to kind of enter their mind, but because of the development of the compassion and its power, they're no longer able to stay in that place. So it kind of chases them away. So you know, there's many sort of stories about how like beings with a very harmful intent, through a powerful meditator bringing forth compassion, they were just dispelled by a virtue of that. Loso. Yeah. So there are many stories, for example, from when the Buddha was in the world, you know, he would manifest an emanation to a being that was causing harm because he saw that harm-causing being had some sort of roots of merit. And he knew that if he was able to kind of guide him in the right direction, that there could be a good outcome. So there's stories like that as well. Right. So Geshe said there's other beings that were around the Buddha for a long time. So he said that so Devadatta is one of them. He said, but this being is not Devadatta. It's another disciple of the Buddha, who was with the Buddha for 30 years, and the Buddha tried to guide him and tried to give him instruction and tried to improve him, and there was just never any improvement, and eventually he got angry at the Buddha and turned against him. So it's not always like there can be some direct form of help. It's said that this particular disciple, he spent 30 years with the Buddha, and he wasn't able to see one single good thing by the end of those 30 years. When it came to the end of those 30 years, all he saw was faults and disappointments. Right. And so actually this particular, Geshe is saying in the text that he read, this monk who stayed with the Buddha 30 years and only saw faults in him, he eventually left the Buddha. And according to this text, it was at that time that Venerable Ananda was called to become the Buddha's attendant.
So
whether that compassion is able to directly benefit or move the minds of those other beings, right? That's a consideration. It won't be able to in every case. But there are many cases where just bringing forth a mind of compassion has a very powerful impact on other beings besides oneself. Yeah. Right, so there's the story of one Lama who was sitting teaching, and when he was teaching outside the house or whatever, there was a hunter who was chasing the deer, and the deer shot the hunter. But the compassion was so strong for the Lama that he didn't want the deer to be killed. His compassion was so strong that he took on the harm to himself, and it was said the deer didn't have any wound whatsoever, but the Lama, he had a visible wound from being shot by the arrow. So, those kind of very profound instances of how that compassion is benefiting, we can see that it's benefiting, but to actually say how that mechanism is working, that's something a little bit more difficult to describe. And it said that, also there was one meditator on a mountain who, from meditating on love and compassion, normally the carnivorous animals that would be killing and eating the other animals, there was no sort of killing or eating that was going on in the vicinity. So this can be the power of the blessing of the meditation of such holy beings. So Geshe said maybe we leave there unless there's more questions. Dave, is there anything else?
Checking. There you go. That's it.
That's it. Okay. All right. Allez, tante shena digi dua tu zo maso mato jenga gil kimeti. Konso lo pangire ya pomentu.
Can I ask?
Oh, there's somebody's trying to say something here. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, good morning. About compassion, and is it possible that a being is born in that realm, and they're in a certain realm, and they're angry and evil-minded, was due to the lack of love and compassion in previous lives, which caused an imprint, and then they were reborn in a really lower realm, or in a formless realm, or whatever realm, and due to the imprint of having lack of compassion, lack of love, and then in the present realm, they then encounter compassion, great compassion, and that will change their mind or be the cause then for them to be subdued and perhaps turn things around for them. That's a lot.
I'm sort of lost, Suzette. I'm so sorry because it was kind
Okay,
of
I'll try to
long.
make it
So I'm going to say back what I understood, and you tell me if I understood you correctly. When you say due to lack of compassion, do you mean that they didn't get love or compassion from others, or it was like they didn't have compassion?
Yeah, in a previous life, they didn't have love and compassion, and it could have been their own karma. Obviously, it would have been.
Yeah.
But it carried on into the next lifetimes.
Yep.
And it was the cause of them to have an evil mind.
Right. Right.
And born in a lower realm,
Yep.
perhaps formless. And then by
But what do you mean by formless? Because the formless realms, Suzette, are normally the godlike realms.
Okay, then how about like a hungry ghost?
Like a hungry. Okay. Yep. Gotcha. Yep.
The one you can't see.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like people can't see them.
Right. 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 Gotcha.
And then because of compassion, or even a hell realm, we don't see, most people just don't see other beings in hell realms, right?
Yeah.
But because of they encounter compassion in those realms by a great meditator or an enlightened being or wherever they find it.
Yep.
That is the cause, that to subdue their evil mind and turn their whole way around.
Sounds like you're asking if them encountering the blessings of the compassion of that powerful meditator can be enough for them to like first bring forth compassion despite not having developed it and being evil-minded.
Right. By the love and compassion of one that has.
Of the meditator. Gotcha. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. I understand you. Sorry. Thank you. Thank you for bearing with me. Nganso Jampa dang Ningje seria di dene ngaronso perna kebuchik chikyang mepa dene koronso kewane kewa Ningje dang Jampa mena dene koronso perna nyalwa drona yidak chana dene koronso gom jabgen chik Ningje gomyagi nupala tene jenapla tene konso Ningje dang Jampa sarpa ke tugirebes. Ngenson dang yida. Yeah, so see, so it's yeah. So I just want to say this it gets complicated because like when we speak about anyways, let's just see what he says. It's only possible if that being that doesn't have the compassion has some sort of connection or relationship to the meditator. In the absence of such a relationship, it's going to be difficult. Yeah. And we also have to be clear that realizations can't be transferred to others, right? So even let's say that they have a connection, right? That being that's the hungry ghost or the hell being, they have a connection with that meditator. They're not going to have a realization of compassion just from the blessing, but they might be able to bring forth like a feeling of love or compassion in their mind.
Okay. Thank you.
No worries. Suzette, did that answer you? If it didn't, don't be afraid to say you need more. Did that answer your question?
Well, it added a little more to it by the thought that you have to have a karmic connection with the being in order to help that being.
Yeah. Nganso semshin jendag ropa chegi chedu. Nganso drawa chi gogire mato lelapo chetugi omare segidu.
Yeah. That ga chimbo chi tsogi was shoji sembado drawa yabo jatona drawa yabo drawa nyemba ji jaba inayo.
Yeah.
Din drawa tela tin jima o kenza.
So that's why Geshe says you get the strange stories of the bodhisattvas that, you know, they would, of course, ideally you have good relationships with sentient beings and you're able to benefit that way. But sometimes the bodhisattva will do something to irritate the sentient being because a bad relationship is better than no relationship at all. Because at least if there's some sort of relationship there, they'll be able to help them, right?
야, 대진 대신 내려오시면 되겠네.
And go ahead.
Wasn't at one time everyone was once our mother?
Yeah.
Mare ko disegire. That's a yes, that's clever. That's a good point. Nganso Jawa yudame karicheni kechi yori karinsena semshin suyen nganso ama ngola nganso ama res da bochik segire dua.
Marta tedo re tene ina yo mo koro o misa ga page ke yarndo ala che mo garo wa chedulina wa.
Ale.
Ganga dun rewa to yar was.
Yeah.
Ina yo ti to le koro page se to yarndo ala ti parati lo chedul.
So Geshe said we are connected to all sentient beings ultimately. That's correct. But there needs to be able to form a connection. We can't just have a completely dry seed. There needs to be some sort of condition that acts as the water or the fertilizer to kind of grow that connection. It can't be totally dry.
But you're
absolutely correct that there's no being that we can point to and say that I'm not connected to that being. Otherwise, meditating on love or compassion for all sentient beings doesn't make sense. So it's absolutely right to point that out.
So I guess that's where having an omniscient mind and being able to realize the connection.
Yeah. Namken di yuna dene jawa yudang me hako tugire du mato tetskale kapure dua. Yes, exactly. And remember, that's why Buddhas are able to help beings so effectively that because of the exalted knower in all aspects, in other words, the omniscient mind, they're able to know exactly what sentient beings need at that very moment, and therefore what they do or say will be perfectly tailored exactly to that moment. Yeah, so because all conceptual thought is completely gone and there's just this instantaneous presence that the Buddha can understand and pervade the needs of multiple beings with multiple different capacities in multiple different places and serve them in the best possible way in each instance.
Right.
So the bodhisattvas can't do that, right? Like they haven't yet reached that final exalted knower in all aspects, that final level of complete omniscience. So they're not always able to operate in the best possible way for each sentient being. So it's in particular for the bodhisattvas to be able to benefit, there needs to be some sort of connection there. Again? Sachubawa, yeah. Right. So the 10th Bhumi Bodhisattva, that's the 10th ground or Bhumi, which is kind of, it's like the last border post before you reach enlightenment. Those 10th Bhumi Bodhisattvas are able to help in very vast and complete ways, but they're not able to help with the kind of same precision and power that a Buddha is able to help. So that's why in Tantra we speak about Zope Sangye, completely perfected Buddhas. Completely perfected actually touches on that point. That is good. So some commentaries say a 10th Bhumi Bodhisattva is a Buddha, but it is not a perfectly completed Buddha. So Suzette, in the vein, I asked Geshe if I'm allowed to ask a question. He's like, maybe. So Suzette, in the vein of your question, then my question is that if the Buddha has that ability, why was the Buddha not able to help like Devadatta and that other guy who was like his attendant before he lost faith and kind of left? So that I'm going to ask Geshe about that. Di yana dene tomba chomdende ko sangeres namkenyeres ine ko Saudi ropache tu mason ane nguma gi shabshu di yang ropache tu mason ko kandang mepadata ko tuna konso kare chene pen tu mason drewa yeres konso dulja tanya porwa
다 때도 거도 몇번 책이 요할 때는 이나 배도 문두스 고로설 까와도 meana.
So I asked
챔버로 왔어.
Chempasana?
거도 몇번 책이 요할스.
Yeah.
건설 대체될 까와도 문두스.
So I said to Geshe, like, so in the case of like Devadatta or this other monk who was the attendant, like obviously there was some connection there because they were serving the Buddha in like a very in the closest position you can imagine, right? And the Buddha had a perfectly omniscient mind, so he was able to understand their affinities and capacities. So why was the Buddha not able to help them? Like, why did it get to the point where there were all of those problems? And Geshe said, yeah, they had the capacity and the affinity, but somehow they didn't have the kelwa, the good fortune to be able to receive the help. So that's also part of it. But because they were able to have a close connection in that lifetime, even though it was a bad one, then certainly as they developed the causes of good fortune in a future lifetime, in a future situation, the Buddha is definitely going to be able to help them. But also, Geshe just giving the caveats is that these things are not the easiest to explain. They're kind of they're mysterious aspects of why things happen karmically. It's not always so easy to explain.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Dekili.
Dekili, sorry, go ahead, Dekili. Yes, I didn't see you there.
Hi. Different subject. I'm just preparing an online self-healing program for women who've survived breast cancer. What might be a skillful way to approach those who believe that it's all due to external conditions? You know, the vaccine, the whatever, that the cause is actually external, when we also know there's a whole internal cause and conditions that had to be in place for it to manifest.
So like how to convince such people that there's internal causes that are part of it as well?
Yeah.
Okay. Then ko tanda cancer nepa gi drolling dabochik sogire duas. In cancer gi nepa den so koron so cancer gi gyu kadi ne chilula gi ne so chikyore kap gi ne so yore matochen korwe gi tsokpa dabochik yore ne so kari na chilula. Konso cancer yong ya yang nanglola gi gyu yores konso kandes la gores. Konso nanglola gi gyu yopadi nganso sae gi gyu yopadi konso ke kandes len tugires.
Mirtate lelawo marwas konso lelawo mares. Ani shato ta konso shawa ngashi ke malane de jates kawarwas.
Yep.
Ta inayo yabochi ne chen del soso ko page hakosarwa. Ta nganzo karina le no mo bote de chegarte so ruru soso hakowarwas.
Reje.
Tendigi page neva mo yare za.
Yeah, so Geshe said that he's not sure. You have to be very skillful with this, but if people can generally accept the fact that they've made mistakes and that they've done negative things in their life, then we can understand that energetically those things create the space for illness to come. But he said you have to be very careful.
This one, ta kene kale ta pena so jig yugi no lan de jaya ra shawa ngam senjel ta neba cha chimbo tani shiba ina sendel ta tani kangi chimbo tani.
So you could say in the Buddhist perspective, right, we look at it as a journey of lifetime. So even if maybe they didn't do something in this lifetime, you know, in a previous lifetime, something can be the cause of experiencing a suffering in a subsequent lifetime. And how, you know, in the Buddha's teachings, it talks about the previous life causes of subsequent life sufferings. You could explain that is a concept they could consider.
Ta chaso petona matona sunji koro jumba chiba makangal ma se pikala 뿌지 손지가 로바지네. 코를 휴제가 고를.
Yeah.
유수마스.
Yeah.
대응 담아 코를 좀 조산도와스.
And that, you know, even causes that are accumulated, even a Buddha can't necessarily protect us from the consequences. There's the story of a place where there was a great war that was being fought, and there was one child there who the Buddha hid underneath his begging bowl in order to be able to protect him and kind of carried him away. And even though they were sort of away from that place and he was under the Buddha's begging bowl, the baby died, right?
까 디딜레트는 손지가 로지데 차서 오지 준비 로지 요사레스. 대내서 간에서 쉬운 말이야.
Right. So within the scriptures, right, it explains why situations happen like that and how karma unfolds the way it does.
생제를 강에제 비가를 보게때 생제가 구와 강에제사 구와 나보지는데 와서 이렇게.
Yeah.
그 되게 지알라 되네. 뭐 하자는 셔요 말해도 그 담아신도야.
야, 그거 무슨
우마냐 쳔보체 생제
냐 쳔보서 알레 콘서 냐디 기 컴퍼니 야
고만노를 내가 제사 주하러 왔어
코다고 right. So the story was that all of the beings who died in that particular place, they were beings who had taken like some sort of very large fish, a whale, and they kept it alive but tore little pieces off of its flesh as a way of getting enough to eat. And of course, that caused terrible suffering. The baby who was hidden under the Buddha's begging bowl, he was not involved in directly harming the animal, but he was said to be the owner of the place where they kept it. And so it was still his karma to pass away eventually, though not violently from war.
다 손질로 투바이네 레일 투기로 자야가게 만두와 손질이 다보다니까 지자야 될 거페도 만두와.
So even directly meeting the Buddha and even having the Buddha place him under his begging bowl as a sort of protection, this could not change the karma that would have to result in his untimely death.
다 대르지 다 렌젤 버게 이치도 다 아르타딩한도 못와서 와서 다 던지고 그게
So you know, those kind of stories are for the purpose of bringing forth faith in karma. Right. Yeah. So I was saying to Geshe, I don't know Dekili. I'm assuming most of these women are not Buddhists. Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So he was saying that then you have to explain it all from the perspective of this lifetime, which involves them accepting that there may have been something wrong that happened that led to it, which can be challenging. And also how part of healing is developing positive minds. And if we're able to hold our mind in a space of love, if we're able to bring forth a mind of compassion, this is definitely something that can be beneficial. Yeah, there's lots of stories in India and in Tibet of miraculous kind of healing from bringing forth these minds.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Yeah,
there's another hand. No, Geshe, not yet. There's another hand.
Go ahead, Ryan.
Go ahead, Ryan.
Hi, Ngawang. Hi, Geshe. Thank you so much for today. During the discussions today, it was mentioned how there are, beings who unfortunately may be carrying around malicious intent and may actually want to harm other people. And this is a very sad situation. And perhaps some of us are lucky enough that in our own lives, we don't perceive too much maliciousness. And contemplating this can be a bit of a scary thing for ourselves or others who may feel like, they may be a victim of malicious intent. If someone perceives that in their lives, what is the best thing they should do to help protect their minds from that?
So you're not talking about the person who's being harmed by the malicious intent, but you're talking about if someone is in a danger of developing this themselves, right?
Perhaps, yeah. Would be a good advice for anybody, I think. But certainly, anybody who didn't consider that maybe someone had malicious intent for them, and now they're maybe thinking, oh, maybe perhaps someone might think malicious of me, and that could be due to my past karma or even karma in this life. And then, if that is the case, what should somebody do?
If you have someone with a malicious intent against you, what should you do? Right?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Nganso chirtang nusem di tets hakoya tets kalekapore dua karin sena chichena nganso mitsegi nangla mijenda kola nusem sheda kemepa rwa halepe dukshadi inedi tsongshiden so shune o chichena michi ngarangi kola migawa champo chikyo san konso nga nepa kea gi depa yoris konso nga kola gi nusem chikyore mijenda chik sosola nusem yonana dene netsu di kandes yagi tangures
nesede 다 대도
미틱 소스 미가네 콘소 네바케 기도바
다데 남만다라 와스 남만다레 다 몽보지리는 다 보게 가르세커 소소가 보게 노진 대화 요르도니라 그서와 아니 온 매바서야 몽보요 하레스.
So I mean yeah, Geshe says he's not sure what to recommend except that if there's some way to improve the relationship or at least to diffuse the intensity, then you have to see if there's some way that you can improve the situation. But there are people who are going to think ill of you no matter what you do, right? There's just people that are petty that way. And no matter what you do, you're not going to change their mind. So other than accepting the situation, he's not sure what to recommend.
소소 정바도 니지도 제와기냐서 배에도 강가 하고 사소나 다 너지 먹가서 뭐 요하러 왔어 예지는 내가 요하러도야 내가 뒤자 매봐서야 소소 내가래.
So but you know ultimately that our task is to connect with those difficult people, like the holy beings advise us that it's from developing love and compassion and patience, and then we actually want to go to the people that we have those difficult relationships with and try to improve it. Yeah. So if we are able to, you know, discern if that person has a negative thought, then with the tools that we have, we can try to improve the relationship. Yeah.
파이나 소승이니 다니까 제발 파스니까 대화요는 소승이니 단대화요를 또 해야 되나.
Yeah, so there's nothing one can do except Geshe was about to tell the story, and Ryan, I'm not sure if you were here that Sunday. It's about the meditator. It's about the meditator who had this dislike for somebody, and every time he saw the dude, he would feel really irritated. And so he was trying to develop compassion, and so he would go down into the town, and at first, if he saw this person, he would like duck down another corner, so he wouldn't even have to cross their path. He was able to eventually come to the point where he could cross their path, but not really look at them or talk to them. Eventually, he got to the point where he was able to have a conversation with them. And so Geshe was about to give that example, but he said, it's a little bit harder because he was the person that had the ill intent, right? So it's a lot easier to work on ourselves. When it's the other person that has the ill intent, Geshe said, apart from bringing forth an attitude of love and compassion and trying to figure out how to improve the relationship, he's not sure what can be done. Yeah. Also, when someone has a harmful intent towards us, the difficult thing can be we don't know what they're holding against us. We could have offended them in a way that we're completely unaware of. Dene yargitane kandif? Yep. Kandis me basogere, nansukingane. Nansogi Korla, Conso Dopadi Mepaso, Candesre, this Sabuchan Lagimandu.
This is what Yamar was cooking in Neo, something in the Jawar, Karina Yardu.
So if we from our side try to show consideration, try to continuously improve the relationship, even without knowing what that person may be holding against us, then it's possible, right, that eventually that dislike that they have for us may shift. So some people are just very direct, but not everybody. Like, for example, you might just be really busy one day and somebody's like trying to get your attention and they think, oh, that person was so mean to me because they gave me like a tired, an unpleasant face. But maybe you were just tired. But fortunately, some people are more transparent rather than holding a grudge. And they'll come up to you and say, I was like trying to approach you that day and you looked at me like really unpleasantly, like, what's the problem? That gives you an opportunity to kind of clear the air and prevent the resentment and the harmful view and the wish to harm from building, right? So with someone who's like that, then like when you know what the source of the problem is, it's a lot easier to kind of talk to that person and figure it out. Yeah. But the only thing to do is to try to figure out some way to improve the relationship. Otherwise, you know, you can't really clear away harmful intent. I saw your question about Tonglen Manoshi, so I'll ask that. Tonglen Pengirebes. Do you see that boy na? So that Pengire in the Nesidi Pengu. So Geshe says Tonglen always benefits you, but whether it's actually going to shift the situation of that person's resentment for you, we can't guarantee that. Yeah. It's really just a matter of like going up to that person and trying to show them a pleasant expression and trying to, you know, do our best. Mambo yechirtan de michi migane koronsa nesa dening anzo de chicken hakogi omare roa.
So typical guy no mine pete na zama imba.
Yeah.
So
yeah. So I was saying to Geshe, sorry Dave, let us just wrap this one up and we'll come to you. Yeah. So Geshe wants to say this point because it's important. So just to wrap up, like I was saying to Geshe, like especially like in online communications, it's like really hard because like you never know if you've offended someone. And so like I often just know that like somebody seems irritated with me and I have like no idea what the reason is. And Geshe said that's exactly the most difficult thing. And the most difficult thing to do in that situation is to still seek that person out and try to show them a nice face and try to like connect with them, even though that's the energy you're getting.
Yeah.
And Geshe said that one of the things that we do, which is kind of really the most like foolish kind of self-sabotage, is we always assume the worst. So if somebody is not showing us the face that we expect, giving us the answer that we expect, other than just thinking it's a random thing or some sort of difficulty, we'll say, what does that person have against me? We immediately personalize it. And this is very foolish because it's going to create so many problems. Yeah. So we create a narrative. We put all this energy into creating a narrative of a very small thing. Whenever I see that person, they don't show me a nice expression or they say something to me that I don't agree with. And we build up a thing. And so Geshe said they may have a harmful intention against us. They may not. it may not be present at all, right? But we create so much difficulty for us by building up that paranoid narrative. And also, we have to understand that sometimes a person may show us an unpleasant face, but sometimes the unpleasant face we're seeing may be because of the discontent within our own mind. The state of our own mind can sometimes cause us to see things in a way that that person didn't intend whatsoever. So when we meet them, show them a nice face. Show them a smile.
Thank you very much. Good old-fashioned
You're
love.
welcome. You're welcome, right?
So,
sorry, Dave, you were going to jump in with something. Sorry.
Yeah, so it's similar. It's similar. The idea of overcoming animosity. There are practices that I've seen that are done that may have this function. For example, offering tormas in a sadhana, or sur offerings to hungry ghosts, or water offerings that I've seen Lamas of Rinchen do night after night and after night, or also torma gyatso. All of these could be moistening a dry connection that could then lead to a better outcome. Is this how this works?
Perna nganso torma pulia korla samlotangna sur korla samlotangna. And those water offerings, you mean the ones to the Nagas, right?
Yeah, sorry,
like,
Nagas.
Where you wear
it.
this
Yep.
funny hat. Yeah, and then nganso lu pulia gi chu dinso yeres. Dinso chat sangwati nusem yugen ropachene nusem medro gires matok jenganso semchen dang drawa mepa drawa soya gi chedires torma gyatso dang lu gi chu pulia dang dinso dabore sur. It's even beyond that, because if we use the ritual as a way to build that connection, but dedicate the merits to them, due to the power of the ritual, they can actually receive direct help from that. So like the sur or the water offering, they can actually receive direct sustenance from that. So of course, as a consequence of that, right, we're creating a connection with these beings, which can be a very beneficial thing. But the actual purpose of the rituals, of those particular rituals you mentioned, is to actually give beings who don't have enough to eat things to eat. Give beings who don't have things to drink, right? It's actually a practice of generosity. And if so if we do this offering and we have enough of an accumulation of merit, through the ritual we can transfer that merit in a way that actually becomes the sustenance that those beings need.
Thank you.
This one?
Okay.
So I think Dave, you were the last question, yes. Right? So okay. Yeah. So everybody, please do enjoy Don's presentation next weekend. And also one thing I forgot to mention. So Geshe does want to share a message for His Holiness's birthday. And Geshe and I were talking. Geshe thinks that this time he might like to dictate it to me, and so we'll do it in the form of a letter. So you'll get a letter from Geshe on the occasion of His Holiness's birthday.
That's assuming you're on the newsletter. So in the chat, we posted the link to the newsletter. So please subscribe to that if you need to.
Yes. No, absolutely do subscribe to our newsletter, but I'll also try to paste it on Facebook so that if you haven't subscribed, you can see it. But please do subscribe to our newsletter. That's the best way to keep track of everything.
And I'll also put it on the website.
You'll put it on the website. Okay, thank you, Manushi.
Yeah, of course.
That's kind of you.
Of course.
All right. Yeah, so Manushi, we have to get that to you soon. You'll get it in a couple of days.
No problem.
Yeah.
Thanks, everybody. Stay happy, everyone. See you later.
Thank you.
Bye.
Tuche Nang.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.